Friday, June 14th. Welcome to Wake Up. Damon Bruce, Larry Kruger, and Chase Sr. joining us from Chat Sports. Great to see you, Chase. Larry, good morning. What's going on, fellas?
What is up? Yes, that's right. Chase is in the house. I normally go with Damon and you at 8:45 and Chase at 10:45, but we got a busy day. We got Kev graduating from school. We got a lot going on, so we decided to combo stream. And so we're bringing Chase and Damon and Larry all together for an 8:45 49er extravaganza. So it's not a big deal when you're on the West Coast, or it's not a big deal when you're on the Central Time. So when you're on the West Coast, man, you got to get up early for the 8:45. But we're here, we're ready, and even though there's just a smattering of Niner conversations out there, we will have that smattering this morning.
Honored to be here with you guys. Usually I don't like a three-man broadcast booth as far as calling a game, but I know that this stream is going to be awesome because I watch you guys all the time, and I'm excited to talk Niners with, yes, two Bay Area sports radio legends. I know Damon was giving me some shit before we started the stream for saying that, but I've watched you guys and listened to you guys for a really long time, so it's awesome to be here.
Thank you. As I was saying, you need a better brand of legend in your life, and hopefully we can find a couple legends for you by the end of today's show that'll be more appropriate. But it is great to have you here, and obviously, guys, we got a story out of Jacksonville, which is a huge bounce-back talking point here to the Bay Area. Trevor Lawrence, boom, getting paid, right? We got a contract for Trevor Lawrence that certainly meets his draft position, what he means to the Jacksonville Jaguars, but in terms of overall NFL performance, I mean, Trevor Lawrence is being paid like he's one of the best quarterbacks in football. He is not that. He is just meeting, his negotiation point right at a time where contracts and price points are going up everywhere. And it seems like anyone who is an established, entrenched starter in this league, someone whose snaps will not disappear with an injury. As soon as they're back healthy, they'll be put back into that starting lineup. Trevor Lawrence is that, but he is not much more than that. He's been in a bad situation that was made worse early in his career with the Urban Meyer hire. He had to overcome his team shortcomings, his coaching shortcomings, his own shortcomings, and he's pretty good. Like, Jacksonville's been okay with him. He has been okay statistically. 5 years, $275 million, $142 million guaranteed, $200 million guaranteed, $142 million at signing. He has a $55 million annual average salary, which ties Cincinnati Joe Burrows for the top paycheck in the NFL in terms of annual average value. He's not that good of a quarterback, but you don't have to be. Your contract needs to be up when it's time to reset the market. And the timing on Trevor Lawrence for this contract is the best thing about Trevor Lawrence getting this contract. He hit the market at the right time.
Well, it's just the way it is. I mean, it's just the way it goes. It's like whoever's the last guy to get paid is at this point seems like to be, there was a point where Jimmy Garoppolo was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. So it really doesn't have anything to do with your status. It just has to do with how recently you signed. And 55 million AAV does make me think that there's a chance that the Niners are going to have to go to at least that spot and maybe even further for Brock Purdy. What do you think, Chase? I mean, now that you see 55 million for Trevor, people speculating that Dak could get 60. What do you think the Purdy number ultimately is going to be?
Yeah, a couple of things here. Not ideal for Trevor Lawrence to start his professional career with Urban Meyer as his head coach. I think Doug Peterson's done a decent job of trying to get him back on track the last couple of years after he started by throwing a lot of interceptions. And I think that resulted in him lacking some confidence coming out of Clemson, where he had so much success and was looked at as a generational quarterback. So the Jags are giving this deal to Lawrence, and he's a quarterback who's only 24 years old, but he's never thrown more than 25 touchdowns in 3 years. He's won just one playoff game. His career completion percentage is 63.8%. He's been wildly inconsistent. And honestly, even given the circumstances of what he's had to deal with in Jacksonville, he's been a little bit underwhelming considering he was supposed to be a generational quarterback. And all that Brock Purdy has done is be consistent and win. and put up numbers, and miss me with Kyle Shanahan and all of the weapons on the Niners make Brock Purdy. He is a byproduct of having all of those great weapons around him. He was number 1 in yards per attempt last year, number 1 in deep ball completion rate, number 1 in deep ball catchable rate percentage, number 1 in true passer rating, number 1 in QBR, number 1 in EPA, and number 2 in red zone completion percentage. So those numbers to me go to show that Brock Purdy's supporting cast and his head coach don't make him. He makes players better. So in turn, if Brock Purdy goes out in 2024 and he duplicates his success from last year, then the number that he's going to make as far as his salary could be richer than Trevor Lawrence. But here's why you shouldn't panic about that. The Patrick Mahomes deal, in which he got $500 million, it was only signed a few years ago, now looks like a bargain. This deal, if Trevor Lawrence ends up playing solid football and not great football, could end up being a good value play for an organization that's been a dumpster fire organization for a long time, but is looking for sustainability and consistency at the quarterback spot. And as you look ahead for Purdy, players like CJ Stroud, and the NFL salary cap continuing to increase, I think some of these quarterback salaries could be north of $60-65 million in the span of a couple of years. So in turn, if Purdy goes out there and balls out, he's going to be a very rich man. And I think for him and his agent, his team, they want to make up for what he's missed out on as far as the money that he hasn't been able to make so far in his NFL career. Trey Lance is going to cost the Niners more this year than Brock Purdy.
5 times as much.
Yep.
It's funny when I see, a lot of people start talking about what Brock is going to make, they'll come up and they'll say, well, hopefully Brock's the kind of guy who doesn't want to come and rob the bank all by himself. He wants to leave a little on the table. I'm like, well, where do you think the start of his career has come from? Like, he's already given at the office. The 49ers have gotten as much of a bargain, I think, as they're going to get on Brock. Yep. And the next time around, they will have to pay through the nose. And look, this Trevor Lawrence contract, you're right, Chase. What is sticker shock today becomes a reasonable price point a couple of years from now. It happens in all of these contracts. We go, whoa. Now I think I see that, Patrick Mahomes is the 7th highest paid quarterback in the league or something now is where it is. The baseline for Purdy's contract, though, has pretty much been plucked by this Lawrence deal, though. It really has. Same amount of years on their bodies, different situations, as completely opposite draft positions as you can find. But Purdy's success, Niner overall success, Purdy's production, I really think now has him looking at a 5-year, it'll be a bargain for the Niners if they bring him in 5 years, 280, probably be 5 years, 300, with at least 50% of that guaranteed, $150 million a year guarantee. I think that this is the opening negotiating point if I'm Team Purdy sitting down with the Niners looking at this Trevor Lawrence deal. I think that this really sets the parameters of what Purdy's looking at.
I think you're right. I think the other thing that I'm really already going to push back on is just, does it really matter? I mean, there's going to be people out there that if it's a record-setting deal are going to quickly shoot to the video of the 49ers can't win a Super Bowl paying Brock Purdy fill in the blank, whatever they paid him. I mean, is there, I realize 40 million's a lot, 45 million's a lot, 50 million's a lot, 55 million's a lot. I mean, the biggest move is that you're going from $1 million to whatever number you're going to. I'm not going to lose my mind if suddenly Brock Purdy makes $56 million a year, and it's like, you can't. If he had taken 48, they would have been a Super Bowl team, but at 56, he's screwing them. It's like I can only wait for that video, but I personally think that it's one of those things we ought to just block out these numbers and just acknowledge the fact that this is kind of reality in the NFL. If you're a quarterback that leads your team to the playoffs and you're considered in the top half of the league and your time comes up for an extension, you're going to get near record-setting money most likely.
Well, Purdy's abnormal price point will not be what is struck in the future. Purdy's abnormal price point is what we're coming out of, right? I mean, if you really want to think about it, The Purdy's about to make normal starting Pro Bowl caliber NFL quarterback money. There's nothing abstract about that. There's nothing abnormal about that. The only thing that's abnormal about that was his starting position as the last pick in the draft is now qualifying for that price point. I think we'll look back at this with not fear that the Niners can't win with Purdy at his future price point. I think we're going to look back at it and just say what opportunity was squandered when Purdy was at this other price point.
You can also look at it this way, right? The Niners have gotten Brock Purdy on such a great bargain that at the end of the day, when he gets this new deal, does it all kind of average out anyway? You know, Brock Purdy finishes top 5 in MVP voting last year, leads the Niners to the Super Bowl, and played elite. He was top 5, top 10 in pretty much every major statistical category. And he was playing at a base salary of under $1 million. So you'll now get that production again if he plays in 2024 as if he performed in 2023 at that going rate. And yes, it is a massive multiplier to go from around $1 million, less than $1 million, to let's set the price tag at $50 million, so to speak. That all kind of averages out at the end of the day. And a few years ago, remember the outrage when Patrick Mahomes signed that deal? $500 million, one of the richest contracts in the history of American sports. Nobody is ever going to duplicate that. Well, now everybody's passing Patrick Mahomes. And if I would have told you then that a wide receiver in Justin Jefferson would be making $35 million per year, people would say you're absolutely crazy. But that's the business and that's the power of the NFL. And as long as the league continues to have this much popularity, this much growth, and it continues to have a stranglehold on America, Brock Purdy might be making $50 million. And you might say, well, how do you fill out the rest of your team? You're also going to have more salary cap space allotted to all teams in the NFL naturally as the game continues to grow.
It all goes up. That's the thing. You know, the
price always goes up.
The price of your concert ticket will never go down. Your movie ticket will never be less than it is today. Today is the least amount of money you'll ever pay to walk into a movie for the rest of your life. There is no going backwards. So we know that this all goes in only one direction. The thing about the Lawrence deal, you know, I know that people are starting to want to wring their hands about what it might mean for Brock and this. What does this mean for the Jacksonville Jaguars? Because you look at the first 3 years of a career, Brock has dwarfed, you know, Trevor Lawrence's success story. Lawrence is now in that $55 million annual average salary. Again, ties him with Joe Burrow. He's the 6th quarterback to have an annual average salary above $50 million. So again, this is just the new normal. A quarterback making $50 million is the new normal. Goff is above 50. Herbert, Jackson, Jalen Hurts, they're above 50. Lawrence's new contract makes him the 9th quarterback with $100 million or more fully guaranteed on their deal. And this is a guy who had 60 turnovers in his first 3 seasons. An NFL high 21 turnovers just last season, 14 picks, 7 lost fumbles. There are only 11 quarterbacks who have ever made their debut since 78 and turned the ball over more in their first 3 seasons. Now, there are some Hall of Famers on this list. Warren Moon, Peyton Manning, John Elway are on that list. But, you know, Trevor has been a prolific turnover machine, and Brock Purdy is quite the opposite of that. So, you know, what I'm talking about is the baseline deal. If Team Brock Purdy a year from now, look at it this way. What does this year look like? What if it happens? What if the Niners ring that bell? What if he has another 4,000-yard, 30-plus touchdown, single-digit interception type seasons and the Niners win the Super Bowl? He might be at $65 million.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing's jumping. I mean, there's no question about it. It's just it's the going rate. And then, you know, we're going to have to see what kind of team can the Niners surround him with. And, you know, that's why you want to, you know, what were the Niners truly committed to when they said they were committed to Trey Lance? They were committed to having a rookie quarterback or a quarterback on a rookie deal to make their finances work. Well, they got that in Purdy, and then they kind of squandered after this year. They will have squandered that. So we'll see. Maybe this year they can get a Super Bowl done and they can win a Super Bowl inside Brock's rookie contract window. That was the goal. And we'll see if, and it's, if you think about it, it's an incredibly difficult thing to come together because how many young quarterbacks play at a level of efficiency that enables their team to win a Super Bowl. It's a very difficult, it's difficult to win a Super Bowl period, but it's almost like today you got to decide, do you want to try to structure it with a rookie deal and surround that rookie quarterback or that young quarterback with a ton of talent and get it done that way? Or is it easier to get it done once your quarterback is making more money because he's now established and makes fewer mistakes and plays at a higher efficiency level? So, I mean, this is kind of like the current debate in the NFL. And you see teams, rookie quarterbacks are very, very popular, but we all know the failure rate. I mean, even the Trevor Lawrence, I mean, look at that draft. Mac Jones traded to the Jags, Trey Lance traded to the Cowboys, Zach Wilson traded to the Broncos.
What quarterback has won a Super Bowl on their rookie
Justin
deal?
Fields traded to the Steelers. I mean, everybody in that draft is traded except for Davis Mills and Trevor.
What quarterbacks have won Super Bowls on their rookie deals? Patrick
Russell
Mahomes,
Wilson,
Ben Roethlisberger,
Russell Wilson. The Eagles made it to the Super Bowl when Carson Wentz was on his rookie deal.
I'll count that as one, even though he didn't get the game. Sure.
Yeah. And then the Bengals made it with Joe Burrow, but they didn't win.
Right. So a handful of examples, a small handful of examples of teams reaching the game with a rookie deal quarterback, and a couple of examples of they then won that game. But it's hard to do. And when you think about sports, there is no harder, we're back to square one, day one at any position that affects a team as greatly as it does the position of quarterback, because your team really can't be that much better than your quarterback. Or according to Brock Purdy's critics, it's vice versa with the 49ers for him and him alone, So,
but as these prices for these quarterbacks go up, now you're talking about, fill in the blank number. I mean, $55 million worth of players the Jaguars could have surrounded Trevor with, that they're now paying him that money. So that's money they can't on a hard cap surround him with, they can't use on surrounding talent. So, I mean, it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off. And I think when you look at, the quarterbacks that have made the Super Bowl on their rookie contracts in recent years, it almost is starting to look like the blueprint. Like that might be the blueprint, is try to get a quarterback on a rookie deal and surround him with as much talent as you possibly can.
It's going to be a shame when the Niners cut Purdy at the end of this year just to get back to another rookie deal on their quarterback.
Tanner Mordecai, step up.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome,
Tanner Mordecai, come on down.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Wisconsin. Like and subscribe. It is great to have you here. Like and subscribe to all three channels. Chase, I know you're more of a numbers guy than I think Larry and I are. You're better at them anyways. Did the salary cap jump $35 million year over year here? It's the biggest salary cap jump ever. Is it somewhere in that ballpark?
Yeah, year over year. Yeah.
Okay. I think we're going to look at a $40 to $50 million salary cap jump in the next season or two, just to accommodate the new price of quarterbacks and wide receivers.
Yep.
The NFL is going to have to do that.
Yeah.
So again, the money that you're worried about now, the cap number that you're worried about now, I think it's all about to greatly expand and grow. And if there really is an 18th game added to the schedule coming soon, I mean, if I'm the players, I want to sit down and I want to redo the entire CBA, and I'm going to address team pay as opposed to quarterback play. But I'm trying to get. I think it's a nuts idea, but I think it works. NFL team salary caps do not include the quarterback's salary, or some sort of forgiveness on an extreme quarterback salary, I think needs to be applied to these rosters to keep some normalcy in football. I mean, you're going to squeeze the back end of your roster so severely to accommodate, 12 to 15 quarterbacks in this league, that I think the NFLPA needs to do something about that. You can't have a billionaire class position and just working class football everywhere else.
You make a fair point too. And on top of that, I guess you could kind of look at it in a malleable sense like this, right? Let's say that the NFL salary cap going into 2025 does jump 40 to 45 million dollars. And for everybody out there concerned about what Brock Purdy could make, what if you just think about it in this sense? Salary cap goes up $40 million. You're going to pay Brock Purdy 50 to 60. So a large chunk of that new money is going to go toward Purdy's new deal, right? But then the remainder of that money, you can still utilize that to fill out your roster. And I do think that that's a way to look at this if you're San Francisco. Also at the same time, and Larry and I have talked about this a lot, regardless of what happens this year, and Larry makes the point that is a totally fair point of teams taking advantage of quarterbacks on their rookie contracts. There's more pressure on the Niners to do that this year, knowing that Purdy is on the final year of his deal. If they win the Super Bowl, giving him a contract isn't going to be as hard as if they have a bad year or if they lose again, because then it's like, man, now we have to pay him all this money and we still haven't won, right? So either way, I think next offseason, though, you're going to run into a scenario, into a situation where you're going to have to make some difficult emotional and roster decisions in letting go of a marquee veteran on this team to have some more flexibility, Damon, that you brought up on the salary cap because of Purdy's new deal.
Should we play the who's the first to go game then? Do we want to do that? No.
Yeah.
Let's not get too far down the road.
It is interesting. There's a lot of different thoughts on the Purdy deal, but I think most people expect that Purdy, the Niners are going to take care of Purdy. They took care of CMC. The question is now, are they going to take care of Brandon Ayuk? Albert Breer says that he predicts the AAV on an Ayuk deal with the Niners is going to be about $29 million. There's possibility that Ayuk wants maybe $30 to $32 million. Mike Silver has reported that the 49ers have offered him an AAV of $26 million. And there's lots of speculation that maybe the 49ers won't get a deal done. Mayoko put out in the ether the other day that, there's a possibility they make him play on the 5th-year option at $14 million, which to me seemed to be the unthinkable. You're going to play a stare down contest and maybe piss off one of your best players and have him become this negative influence in your room because he's unhappy about his contract. I don't know if they're going to play that kind of hardball, but it sounds like it. I
do know this. If he gets in here for if he is back, right, and I want him to be back, I think we're all three of us are pro Brandon Ayuk being on this team and get the price done, get him in and figure it out. But if he comes back and he is on a deal less than $29 million, shame on everyone for taking this long to get that done. If this is south of $30 million, that deal could have been struck a fucking month ago, is how that really feels. So if they're twiddling,
there's no games in between, so there's no real motivation. I mean, and things get done when there's a deadline. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, so what? So we can feel better? I mean, there are no games.
No, we would have been in for mandatory minicamp. So he would have been there for the full off season. So he and Brock Purdy are the guys walking out and shotgunning beers at the Luke Bryant concert or whatever. I just want the team to be all on the same page and together in a year you're trying to win the Super Bowl. And if this really comes down to, and they spent 4 months in public dicking around over, $1.8 million. Fuck everybody if that's what this is going to be. We got him done at 28, not 26, and it took us 3 more months to bridge that $2 million
this is the level of hardball that they must feel they need to play through Parag Marate's negotiation when they have a quarterback making what he's making. But Mr. Irrelevance says Niners and BA seem $4 million off. Buckner and the Niners were in the neighborhood of $2 to $3 million off, and he says BA might be gone. I think most people assume the deal's getting done. Most people assume the deal's getting done probably close to the regular season. I hope that's not the case because I'd like to see him get some practice reps. But should the Niners have a walk-away price? Should the Niners, if Ayuk just says, you know what, I gotta have $30 million, and they really don't feel like supply and demand and all the other factors and usage rates and that he's not worth $30 million, is it in their best interest to try to make a move, try to make a trade for him? And if so, to me, it seems like I wouldn't want him to go to Green Bay, but New England, anybody in the AFC not named Kansas City or Baltimore, I'd be pretty much open-minded. You want Pittsburgh, Chargers, Raiders, Patriots. I could work a deal out with any of those teams.
To Damon's point, I think the Niners have messed this up in spectacular fashion. And I give San Francisco credit. Historically, under John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, they've been a forward-thinking, innovative, savvy organization. But with these contract extensions, they've operated in an old school type of way, in the sense of, well, we've always done it this way, so why change? We always give out these contract extensions late July, early August. And in the case of Nick Bosa last year, it lasted until September because we made him at the time the highest paid non-quarterback in the history of the NFL. But you have to have better financial and mental wherewithal throughout what has happened this entire offseason. Because when Calvin Ridley got $23 million per year from the Tennessee Titans, that should have sent a message to you, oh man, that reset the wide receiver market. We might have to act a little bit quicker and not operate as we usually have with Brandon Ayuk, like we have with other players in the past, because that reset the market the first time. And then Devontae Smith got $25 million per year. And then A.J. Brown got $32 million per year. Then Amon-Ra St. Brown got 28. Jalen Waddle got 28. Now, if Brandon Ayuk were to get the targets of a Jalen Waddle and an A.J. Brown and an Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think that his production would be really good. And that's probably where the Niners look at Ayuk's new deal and saying, look, Debo's making around 24. Our asking price right now is at about $26 million. We feel as though with the production that you've put up, you're worth that number. But then Ayuk is probably saying, in a run-centric offense, I was a second-team All-Pro, and look at the numbers that I've put up. So the 49ers have kind of put themselves into a corner here in which I'm not sure the leverage is on their side. And I think that Ayuk has an argument to be made that he is worth 28 to 30 million, especially with Justin Jefferson now making 35. Obviously, he's not worth that, but did that in turn increase the price tag from 26 to 28 and maybe even $30 million?
I think the Waddle deal, maybe more than anything, Chase, is what threw the wrench in the works here, because Waddle is not the number one receiver on his own team.
Exactly.
So the Dolphins are paying WR2 $28 million. And if you were going to be comfortable with $28 million, and maybe a month ago Ayuk would have been, now you're uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
Again, they did. I think they waited too long. Now with any trade, Larry, like you said, is they decide it's too much now. Okay, so you've decided it's too much now, 2-3 months too late. But okay, any trade for who, for what? I'll judge the trade when you tell me what's coming back. And I'm not going to tell you that any trade that you would make for Ayuk right now wouldn't be a good trade, wouldn't benefit the 49ers. But for who, for what, and for how this year, does it help in 2024? And
that's the key.
That's all I care about, man. That's all
That's the key. That's why this talk about trade him to the Jets for a 1 and a 2. Well, a 1 and a 2 is a fine price, but in 2025, you're going to have a hard time staring down Trent Williams and some of the veterans and saying, we moved a star player off of our roster in the midst of our Super Bowl window. That's a tough sell.
Well, should we have learned from the DeForest Buckner situation by now?
Well, I mean, and if you learn from that, what's your lesson?
Exactly.
What is the lesson? Hey, you don't trade special players. Or is the lesson you don't turn around and trade special players for one draft choice because there's a failure rate of draft choices? Right. And I just look at the Niners and go, do they really need Ayuk? I mean, right now you've got Debo and JJ and Kittle and CMC. You just added Pearsall. You just added Cowing. You're thin at tight end. You're thin at offensive line. At tackle, you're Your defensive line could probably use help. You could use a free safety. You could use a great corner. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if somebody came offering a piece or two, and I don't want to pay Ayuk $30+ million, and he's there, and he's holding out, at some point you got to do something. I don't know. I don't know what that point is.
The only thing that could, I think, justify okay, we are going to deal Ayuk here, and we're going to deal him for future assets, not necessarily return on 2024, is this team believes Ricky Pearsall will be in the conversation for offensive rookie of the year in the NFL. Like, if that's what Pearsall is, if Pearsall is a guy who is out here deeply, heavily involved in the game plan to the point where that's why you moved on from Brandon Ayuk. You don't need Brandon Ayuk. This guy does what Ayuk does year one. If that's who he is, then yeah, go ahead and get away with that. I also see a world where Pearsall, I'm going to set your over-under on 30 catches for Ricky Pearsall's rookie year. You going over or under on that?
Over.
I like over.
All right. Well, Juwan Jennings had 19 catches last year. That's it. That's it. The third wide receiver on the 49ers is a forgotten man statistically. So is Pearsall going to be the third wide receiver on this team? I don't think so. Not if Brandon Ayuk's on the depth chart. I think he's the fourth. Unless he beats out Juwan Jennings, he's the fourth wide receiver on this team. Last year's third caught 19 balls. So, I mean,
the usage of Pearsall and the usage of JJ, I think, are going to be quite different. I think JJ, you're right, is a third option. He's a possession receiver. I think I could see Pearsall piling up, lots of catches, because he seems like a continuity piece that Brock's going to go to a lot.
I like your optimism. I don't even know if he's on the field. I don't know if Ricky Pearsall is getting snaps, much less targets, much less catches. Historically, rookie wide receivers are uninvolved in Kyle Shanahan's offense. Uninvolved, basically. So, what is Pearsall? If you think Pearsall is all that in a bag of chips, then maybe move off Ayuk. Unless you're totally convinced that's the guy, you should have moved off Ayuk before the draft. You should have gotten more assets. You should have gone, you should have done that by now. Like, to me, they painted themselves in the you got to bring Brandon Ayuk back corner at the price he wants now, because like Chase said, they kind of slow played this thing to their detriment, not their,
they may have just too many great players at once. And it might be, it's funny. Other teams, Kansas City looked at Tyreek and they said, we can win without him. And Tennessee looked at A.J. Brown, said we could win without him. And Green Bay said we could win without Devontae. And Buffalo said we could win without Diggs.
Well, only one of those teams was right.
But it's interesting because
right about that has the maybe greatest quarterback that has ever played the game.
As far as I don't know if you're only right if you win the Super Bowl, but I'm just saying these teams decided that there was a price point. See, that's the one difference. The difference between quarterbacks and receivers is there's supply and demand issues with quarterbacks, but there's not that supply and demand issue with receivers. So, that's what's pushing back. I think that's what's making the 49ers say, you know what, we need fiscal responsibility here, because if you move off of Ayuk, there's another receiver coming. There's never been more receivers available than what you see right now on an annual basis in the draft and in free agency. So I think that's the factor here. That's kind of, otherwise you would have just signed him already. And then the other factor here is that he has to be paid at the end. We're here because Ayuk's camp wanted to be here. And they stated that in February at the Combine. We heard it through Ian Rappaport when he came out and said, you know what? Ayuk's camp wants to wait till everybody else is signed. Well, they're there. And now we're going to find out if that blows his number beyond the Niners means.
I wonder why running backs became a league-wide devalue that position conversation, but wide receivers have avoided it. I really do. Like if there are so many, like these guys are all a dime a dozen. You just need, you got to be fast. You got to make a good cut. You got to catch a ball. And there are 90 guys in America who are good at this right now, can be professionals at it right now. So there is a huge supply. Why is there such a demand for the elite ones then? Like,
I think your premise might be
offensive line and just go get dudes out of the parking lot to play wide receiver.
I think the premise could be wrong. I mean, I think history shows that NFL running backs are getting underdrafted, but because everybody's worried about longevity. But NFL wide receivers, for the most part, there are very few NFL wide receivers that sign a second big contract. They usually get one big contract. So in a lot of ways, I think running backs or wide receivers are similar. Running backs franchise tag number is lower than wide receiver franchise tag number. So, I mean, that's the thing. You're paying Christian McCaffrey the most of any running back, but he's making $19 million. Ayuk wants maybe $35 million. Who knows? I mean, we have no idea. Probably $30 to $35 million. That's considerably higher than any running back in the league.
I think there's something to be said too, where these drafts are so littered with really talented wide receivers, but when you draft, groom, develop, invest time and energy into scouting a player, seeing him become special to the point where at the end of their rookie contract, they're deserving and worthy of a new deal, it's a success story for your organization. For Brandon Ayuk, JUCO guy, goes to Arizona State. Niners had him higher on their draft board as compared to a lot of other teams. Some people thought it was a huge reach, and he was looked at as a little bit raw, right? But comes in, COVID season in 2020, by the way, with no preseason games, limited training camp practices, and in an injury-plagued season for the Niners coming off that 2019 Super Bowl. He led all receivers in production that year and missed time. And then every year that he's been in the NFL, he's gotten better and better and better. So you saw the potential of him becoming a really good player. I think he's exceeded the Niners' expectations. I don't know if they saw him becoming this good. Route runner, deep ball threat, everything to his route tree, a second team All-Pro. And that's why I don't think it makes sense to let a special player like that walk. Yeah, you have really good drafts as far as wide receiver talent goes, but as you both said, they're somewhat known commodities. And that's why if you trade Ayuk before the year, the time was not to trade him. The time is not to trade him before the year. The time was to trade him before the draft, because then you can find his replacement, you can gather assets. But now if you trade Ayuk, you're not sure what Pearsall is going to be. And if Pearsall flops, you're in a precarious situation for your offense in a year in which you have Super Bowl aspirations and expectations.
They've painted themselves into the Brandon Ayuk corner. And that, I think, is Ayuk's leverage. And that might be what brings this to 30, if not north of 30. And Parag is going to have to trim the fat on the back end of his roster and figure it out another way. I really think that that's the situation that they're in now. And I also think that that would yield the single best football team that this season can provide. And that's what the Niners should be all about. Like, I know it's narrow-minded to think of only one season at a time. And if you're the franchise, you have to have a broader pieces fit together year over year type of plan. But it really needs to be thrown out. It is win the Super Bowl right now. That's the mandate. There it is. And I don't know if you get better or closer to doing that without Brandon Ayuk, who maybe more than any other wide receiver on this team is as integral to the running game as he is the passing game. He's such a good downfield blocker. They need him. They absolutely need him.
Bleacher Report just had 4 trades the other day, and I looked at every one of them, and it was like Ayuk to the Steelers for Darnell Washington in a first. Okay. Ayuk to the Jets for a first and a second in next year's draft. All right. You're getting nothing back for this year. Ayuk for Christian Watson in a second. You're really going to trade Ayuk to Green Bay? I mean, that's like Charles Haley to the Cowboys.
For a player with hamstring issues.
Right. And then it was like Ayuk to the Chargers for Joey Bosa, who's been, hurt all the time, makes a ton of money. I mean, it's like probably going to be released at the end of the year because of his $36 million 2025 cap hit. So, I mean, I don't see any of those deals as being attractive. Now, But I'm also not in the camp that says that, man, it's you got to have Ayuk. If somebody offered you something good or something that could help you win this year, a 2-for-1 at wide receiver, or some combination of players and picks that you thought was fair, I'd make the trade. It's not like I wouldn't, oh my God, I've got some unrealistic price tag on Brandon Ayuk, but I don't like any of those four. What did you see those four, Chase? What'd you think of those four?
Yeah, it was funny because we've had a couple, you and I, segments overlap because it's that time of June where you're just trying to find some content to talk about here.
We Googled the same thing. Everyone Googled the same shit.
And you just form your opinions off that. The deal that I actually like the best, and Larry, I know that you said that the Niners wouldn't get anything this year, but if you're just talking about overall value of trading Brandon Ayuk away, it's the first and second round pick. You drafted Ayuk 25th overall in 2020. If the Jets end up floundering this year, that could be a top 20 pick, which would be great value. You can either
be a top 10 pick.
Yeah, it could be a top 10 pick easily. You can address offensive line, and you can find a Colton McKivitz replacement and or a wide receiver, and then whichever position you don't draft in the first round, then you target that position in the second round, and you can get a really good wideout in the second. And then the Niners would be in a situation here where they have 2 first-round picks, one their own, one that you acquire, and then 2 second-round picks, one from the Jets, one for yourself. Anytime you have 4 picks inside the top 60, that's great for you to build your football team, or you can package those picks to move up for a player who you really covet. So that's the move that I really like, because Christian Watson, 6'5", really good speed, is always hurt. Darnell Washington is a physical freak at 6'8", but is he a pass-catching tight end? I'm not sure. Joey Bosa's barely played the last 2 years, and he's really expensive. And so the draft capital is what I'd be looking for, because it helps your football team in 2025 greatly.
Well,
how about this one?
You need as many players on rookie deals who are good players and starters for you, with the Brock's making $60 million future coming up.
There's a great article out right now on online from Jordan Sigler about the Chargers, and how the Chargers, who kissed off Mike Williams, decided they didn't need Keenan Allen, after he spent his entire 11-year career with the Chargers, but Harbaugh shipped him to the Bears for a 4th-round draft choice, despite the fact that Keenan wanted to stay with the Chargers the rest of his career. Well, according to reports out of from The Athletic, or my good friend Daniel Popper, who covers the Chargers, he said the Chargers dropped 5 passes to start the team period of Tuesday's mandatory OTAs. And they're speculating that the Chargers, may have blown it by getting rid of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and maybe in the market for a wide receiver. I mean, if the Chargers came and said, I'll give you Ladd McConkey and Brendan Rice and a 2nd-round pick, would you do that? Would you take those 2 receivers for one, even though, they're kind of more speculative receivers? I mean, I think McConkey's decent, but he's small and he's a 2nd-round pick. He's a rookie. Brendan Allen got drafted in the 7th round, so he just got totally bypassed. Would you trade Ayuk to the Chargers for those 2 receivers if you could get a day 2 pick in addition, or is that not enough?
It's kind of intriguing, but what does your wide receiver room then look like? You have Deebo Samuel, Ricky Pearsall, Ladd McConkey, Jacob Cowing, and Brendan Rice. I guess you have a lot of young players, but then you have a bunch of young pieces for a team that had the number 1 overall offense in the NFL, averaged nearly 30 points per game. You're trying to take some of the workload off Christian McCaffrey after you extended him through 2027, but now you might have to revert back to more so of a running attack, because, as Damon said earlier, when do rookie wide receivers really produce crazy numbers in a Kyle Shanahan scheme and offense,
or just in anybody's scheme?
Exactly. So it kind of puts yourselves in a difficult situation there. And then we'd also have a lot of white wide receiver comps with Ricky Pearsall and Ladd McConkey.
Yeah, there would be. And the Niners, would have a very heavily white core of weapons, and they would become the West Coast Celtics of the NFL. But it does make you wonder if if the Niners have a walk away on Ayuk. And it's funny. I was asking about some other people who cover the Niners about what do you think the impact is if the Niners did play super hardball and just said, no, you're play on the 5th-year option. And I said, do you think Ayuk would pout? Do you think he would complain? And the people that I asked about it thought that he would be fine, but that the rest of the guys in the room might actually, talk about it and cause some friction. What do you think? If the Niners just say to him, hey, you know what? You play at $14 million after they paid Bosa, paid CMC, would there be locker room discontent, you think?
Maybe, and I don't care. Like, that's hey, we put 26 million in front of him. He said no. We said the option is take this or play at that. He chose play at that. This is how he chooses to negotiate his career. This is, Team Ayuk's choice, not just Brandon. He got together with his representatives and they said, we would rather leave money on the table today for bigger, brighter future tomorrow. And they could still come back and franchise him after that. I mean, getting him paid more right now is really only kind of the nice thing to do anyways. Like, the Niners are trying to get a deal done. And if he's just saying, no, everything, well, that deal does not need to be done for you to be contractually obligated to come play for us this year anyways. So, I guess that's the level of hardball there. I mean, we've talked about this thing from every conceivable angle. We have Rubik's cubed the Brandon Ayuk conversation so many times. The only thing I'm ready for is he's back or he's gone. That's it. Like, I'm so sick of it. I'm tired of it. They got to be tired of it too. Just get it done from that standpoint, just to move on, just get everybody going.
We're looking at a potential disaster here. Can you imagine if the Niners going into the draft elect to not trade Brandon Ayuk, and then they wait to give him the contract extension? Then the market for the wide receiver position continues to explode, and then they don't get a deal done. And then what if they trade him before the year? I mean, that is a series of massive mess ups by San Francisco. They can rectify this. TJ Houshmandzadeh trains Brandon Ayuk in the offseason. He said last week, if Ayuk got the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal, $28 million, he'd be at the facility next week.
But isn't Amon-Ra average like 110 catches a year?
Yes, but with more targets. Targets. So if Ayuk gets more targets, does he have better production naturally? But if Mike Silver's report is true, that $26 million is the number that the Niners are offering, and Ayuk's asking price is $28, why don't you just go up to $2 million instead of having this long holdout, long standoff, get the deal done for a widely respected player who's integral to your offense as a pass catcher? He's your best wide receiver on the team, but he's also respected with the way that he plays, the toughness he exudes in the blocking game. And he's a homegrown player, and it would be a bad look for San Francisco after the previous off seasons in which they've paid their homegrown players all to record deals in some way, shape, or form. George Kittle, Fred Warner, Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa. You're just going to bypass an opportunity to pay Brandon Ayuk, who has a great connection with your young quarterback who you look at as a franchise guy? It's risky.
You know what the problem is with this organization is that there's a true disconnect between the powers, the three-headed power brokers. So you have Shanahan that defines his success by winning games. Regular season games, obviously, is his forte. John Lynch, who defines success or failure at his job with winning trades, and then Parag Marathe, who defines his success ratio within the franchise is negotiating one-sided contracts that benefit the 49ers. So that's really, you've got three different agendas, and when you have three different agendas, it's hard to prioritize winning that Super Bowl when the guy who's handling the chief negotiator is worried about winning the battle and doesn't care about the war. You know what I mean? It's like ultimately the job is to win the war, to win the Super Bowl, and if you win, you may win some of these battles, you may lose some of these battles, but I that's my sense of it, is that they all have their areas of expertise and possibly their areas where Jed, the owner of the team, holds their feet to the fire on certain things. And that's the sense I get that the 49ers, that Parag is graded and judged, and his value is equated to what kind of contracts does he get done and how team friendly are they?
Well,
And
here's the thing.
He's been very good at his job.
Parag is on scholarship. It's Jed's guy. He's not going anywhere. John Lynch is a Hall of Famer. He's got, his reputation is assured. We don't need to worry about him at all. Having said all that, this is Kyle's show. Kyle should walk into both their rooms and say, get your fucking job done. You get your job done, and I don't care which one of you comes out with a win. I need my quarterback with my wide receiver on the practice field come Monday. Get that shit done, boys. And that's how Kyle should look at this.
Yeah, but it takes two to tango. And there's a Ayuk's camp out there. And until Jefferson just signed within the last, when did Jefferson sign? 10 days ago?
It comes in south of 30 million. Shame on everyone for dicking around for a number that's under that's under 30 million. Again, 26, no way. 28 is a yes. You should have settled on 27 and a half 3 weeks ago and be done with this by now.
Earlier in the offseason, I think 25 would have gotten it done. That's more than Deebo Samuel. And I think 25 would have gotten it done. And now you risk having to give him 30.
By the way, just getting back to before we move on too much further, you were just talking about the Chargers. We didn't have much NFL news this week, outside of the Trevor Lawrence contract and how it plays off Purdy and all the Brandon Ayuk nonsense that we go over every fucking show we do. The Dolphins signed Calais Campbell. Like, that's the only other bit of NFL news that I really have. Some tampering charges around the Falcons, which don't quite match up to the slap on the wrist the 49ers got for the mispayment of whatever happened in their accounting department. But the other thing that I did have for you is that the Chargers are standing in front of the media now and giving their book reports about what's it like now that Jim Harbaugh is in town, new sheriff in town. How's that feel? It's not a good look for Brandon Staley. It really isn't. Basically, every Charger stepping to a microphone and be like, yeah, we got a real grown man leading the team now with one message, and it's not muddled, and it's not a team of voices that are giving us directions. It comes from Jim. It goes from God to Jim to us. That's the little chain of command. And they're just sort of crapping on Brandon Staley, what a bad communicator he was, what a not real man leader he was. I saw Trevor Lawrence and Joey Bosa basically saying like, yeah, it's like dad's home now. It's like there's a real presence in our coaching box that, they weren't saying Brandon Staley had. So there you go. That was interesting.
What's the pop culture societal reference that you could go to from going from Brandon Staley to Jim Harbaugh? That's a big gap right there.
Mike Singletary to Jim Harbaugh.
That's actually pretty good. I like that.
Man, Jim Harbaugh is really good at understanding.
What did Brandon Staley do?
Yeah. He gave up 60 some odd points to the Raiders.
Yeah.
But and is Brandon Staley going to be good for the Niners or not? I don't know.
Staley got Antonio Pierce a job. That's what Brandon Staley did.
Yeah, Brandon Staley is had a good year with the Rams as a defensive coordinator, and man, he has surfed that an awful long way. He really has. He really has. Hey, one thing I wanted to also get to here, I thought this was kind of interesting. There was a USA Today offensive line ranking list, and they list the Lions, Colts, and Eagles, 1, 2, 3 best offensive lines in the sport. They list the New York Giants, the Washington Commanders, and the Denver Broncos, 32, 31, and 30 worst offensive lines in the sport.
Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
What? So, yeah, the top 5 offensive lines in order: Detroit, Colts, Eagles, Chiefs, Browns. Where do you I've now given you the top 5 and the bottom 3. Where do you think the 49ers sit on this list of the top 32 offensive lines in pro football?
23 to 25.
Damon?
I would say somewhere 15 to 20.
10.
What?
They list the Niners as the 10th best offensive line. It says the blocking metrics were all good last year. Christian McCaffrey enjoyed the number 2 yards before contact when he ran. The results were similar to those in 2022. They've corrected a problem with negative runs. The 49ers did nothing in the free agent market for losses or gains, but spent a third-round pick on Dominic Purdy from Kansas, along with a late-round draft pick at guard for depth. Trent Williams went to another Pro Bowl, continues to defy age at age 35. The 49ers sport a top 10 unit each year, and Christian McCaffrey probably helps them look a bit better than they are. The blocking remains an asset to the offense, but there's no more reason to expect improvement. Top 10. They've got the Niners at 10. They've got Green Bay at 11, Houston at 12 behind them. What do you think of that?
I'll say this. The Niners offensive line was so bad last year, they were in the Super Bowl.
But were they there? Were they there in spite of their offensive line? But the number that's hard to avoid is Christian McCaffrey, number 2 in the NFL as far as yards before contact.
Is that scheme, though? Is that scheme and play design? Because 3/5 of the offensive line for the Niners, to me, I think is a big question mark right now. Center, right guard, right tackle. So yeah. I can't pit the Niners as the 10th best offensive line when only 2/5 of it I'm sure about in Trent Williams and Aaron Banks.
Yeah, I mean, I like McKivitz a little bit more than you do but I don't believe in Brendel, and I don't believe in what they've got at right guard right now. I mean, to me, I want to see them go from the old guys to the young guys. And if that means Nugent, that means Nugent. If that means Purdy, that means Purdy. If it's Purdy and Burford, I would like to see somebody besides Brendel and Feliciano at center and right guard.
I'm really rooting on Spencer Burford getting his shit together here. I think he's got an awful lot of potential. I think he is a really on the verge. Here it is. This is the fork in the road of his career. This is the year where he starts seeing the matrix and it comes together for him. Or this is the year where he continues to be a physical specimen, but undisciplined in his consistency. And he gets replaced by Dominic Purdy. Again, when everyone agrees that you're a physical specimen, maybe the best physical specimen on the offensive line, and you get beat by a rookie, that's basically saying, I'm not that he's dumb, but you're a dumb football player. You can't see what's in front of you. You don't react well to the information as you're processing in it. So we're just going to start again with a raw talent who is, maybe you're physical inferior, but he's already smarter than you.
It could have absolutely zero to do with intellect. I mean, a lot of it's just about quickness. How is your short area quickness?
Just on-field intellect. I'm not saying the guy.
No, but I mean, a lot of it's not even about on-field intellect. A lot of it's just about how quickly can you get out of your stance and engage the defensive lineman. And it's like, do you have that quickness to get
my thing was
your hands on him before he gets his hands on you?
When he's engaged with guys, he kind of gets the job done. He decided he wasn't even going to engage the best defensive lineman of the Kansas City Chiefs on the biggest snap of the Super Bowl.
I mean, he made a mental mistake.
That was the problem. So that's the intellect I'm talking about. That's the football smarts that really hurt the Niners. I mean,
this is the Niners put a ton of belief in Chris Forster to coach these guys up. So there you go. It's like, to some degree, they put it on him. They're like, and he himself has come out and said, you know what? If it was up to me, I'd rather draft Ricky Pearsall, types, wide receivers and skill position guys early over offensive linemen. He's like, in our scheme, you can find offensive linemen late. All right, but it's your job within the scheme to again get those guys coached up and ready to roll. So yeah, you want to be popular with Shanahan and say, hey, we don't need offensive linemen in the first, second, or third round. That's fine. But then you better succeed with the offensive linemen they draft for you in the 4th and 5th and 6th round. Otherwise, you could make a very strong argument that football begins and ends with offensive line play. And so, the Niners were 28th in the NFL interior offensive line last year, Pro Football Focus in their rankings. So
it's amazing how they can go from 28th Pro Football Focus grade to 10th best in the league.
Yeah,
in an off season where they didn't
add it's USA Today,
but Purdy, and it is USA Today. So
maybe USA Today is not as good as at
not elite. Yes. Not elite. Sorry, everyone.
I will say this for Burford, 23 years old as a rookie, you started every game but one. You've certainly seen some flashes of solid play, and if you actually go back and look at the trick play in which Jawan Jennings threw it to McCaffrey, The block that Burford had on that play was a spectacular, instinctual, aware play that allowed Christian McCaffrey to get shot out of a cannon to take that ball to the end zone. Now, we know what happened late in the game when he had the mental error and he didn't block Chris Jones. But I do think the potential is there. Larry, you're on it. Chris Forster has to do a better job of developing him. That's what it comes down to.
You can coach him up. Yeah, you can sit there and say that you don't need first and second round draft choices to have a good lineman, but then you have to have a good line. Bob McKittrick did it for years for the 49ers, and if they're gonna, Hudson Hawk did it in Dallas, and Alex Gibbs did it in Denver, and Dante Zarnecchia did it in New England. Getting by and winning championships with replacement level offensive linemen with day 3 guys and undrafted free agents. And the best offensive line coaches can do that. But now it's really on Forster to develop either Kingston or Pooney or, Drake Nugent or, some Burford, guys that were, guys that are offensive linemen that weren't taken in the first 3 rounds.
Dude, Drake Nugent could solve so many problems if he turns out to be like a steal. And oh my God, he's your week 1 starting center. I mean,
he might be. He looks great in the minicamp. I mean, he looked phenomenal.
I don't think they've even allowed offensive. They haven't even allowed line of scrimmage contact yet, though. So I don't know what he looks like. No one knows what he looks like yet. He hasn't been hit.
No, but I've been at practice. He plays with leverage. He's energetic. He practices with energy. He's got a little pop. You can see the athleticism. I mean, you can see that the Niners between Kingston, Pooney, and Nugent added 3, prospects that are of note, like guys that could potentially actually start in the NFL as opposed to just, the Nick Sikels and the Jalen Moores and the guys they've had off the bench in recent years, to me, kind of top out as backup offensive linemen. I think the guys they got this year potentially are starters, but it's on Forster to bring them along.
Larry, do you buy the Ben Barch hype?
I do. I mean, I like Ben a little bit, but I also, I talked to Forster about Barch last year when they acquired him, and he said Jacksonville's O-line coach was like, man, this guy's perfect for your system. We're going to try to sneak him through waivers because we're trying to make another roster move, and kind of, suggested almost that, that Chris and the Niners jump at Barch. I think Barch is in the mix at center for sure.
I'm the football guy.
Yeah, I don't know if Jake Brendle's going to be the guy this year. That's our Trent Baalke impersonation.
We should tell Chase just don't worry about these terrible impressions at the end of the show.
I love the impression.
I got one last thing for you guys. I don't know if you can hear it if it's translating, but I got WrestleMania breaking out with God bless my in-laws who are in watching the boys this morning, so we can do this show. I was told yesterday when I picked the boys up from school that summer break starts today. I was like, oh, I thought that was on Monday. I'm glad we had this conversation. I had no idea. So I got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. Based on quarterbacking salaries, when this is over, I got to bring them out in the backyard and teach each to start throwing how to throw a football out here. I got to have a $60 million man upstairs, for goodness sakes. But I've got one final story for you guys when you're done, and then I'll get out of here so WrestleMania is not all over the air here. I don't know if you're hearing the crashing that's coming through my ceiling here, but I am.
We're not.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you're in the clear.
Good professionalism. That's what we strive for over here. Have you seen the fucking Kansas City Super Bowl ring?
Yes.
Have you seen
I have not.
It has the game-winning play on the ring.
It's awesome. I mean, that's the thing. Rings are like decoder rings now. You can lift them open. There's something in there. And I don't know, maybe you can keep a snack or a few Skittles in there or something, but you can pop open the Chiefs ring, which because it's got like 500 plus diamonds on it. Plus it's got rubies in it. Like any Niner ring would probably have rubies in it too. So you can't help but think of like, this is what the Niners Super Bowl ring might have looked like as you're looking at this thing that is just the size of a coffee table, much less a ring. You open it up And the play that they scored their game-winning touchdown on was called Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
And it's sketched out in the top of the ring with all the players in the ring represented as tiny little Lombardi trophies. Oh,
really? I got to see this.
It's intricate. It's a very, very, very intricate ring. Now, really, though, if the Kansas City Chiefs wanted to pay tribute to the play that really won them the Super Bowl, instead of it being Tom and Jerry, I think they should have a picture of Kyle taking the ball in overtime, or they should have had a picture of Kyle electing to kick a field goal rather than go for it early in that overtime. Those, I believe, are the plays that allowed Kansas City to win their Super Bowl, not the play that they ran to score the touchdown.
I was thinking about that the other day, and coaches, when they used to go up against Bill Belichick, they would coach scared. I think Kyle Shanahan in overtime coached scared.
He did.
No reason why you punt that football away. You're giving the ball away to Patrick Mahomes. You're beefing openly with Steve Wilkes. You're stepping in to change some of the defensive calls and scheme, and you go for it there. You go for the kill shot. You had a look that was there. Unfortunately, the Chiefs defense was just a little bit better, but that's the thing with Kyle Shanahan. Game management continues to be lackluster, and he coaches scared and conservative sometimes.
Yeah. You got to know the rules. You got to know the
rules too.
As a rule.
I saw a photo of Patrick Mahomes with shades on and 3 rings, and I'm like, this just makes me sick.
Is this it? Is this the ring we're talking about?
There it is.
God.
That's it.
It's a big ring.
I can't lie. It looks great.
It looks fantastic. And here's
that
the thing.
So wait, where is the play designed? I don't see the play here.
So
it's
the
on the
lid
inside.
opens, Larry.
Yeah.
The ring opens.
The ring opens to reveal the Tom and Jerry play, and then on the feet, like on the lid of the opening part of the top of the clamshell that opens, on the lid is the Tom and Jerry play, and then it's represented on the field with tiny little Lombardi trophies all over it.
Oh God. Sick. All right. Well, that's probably enough for today.
That's the right way to end the show. How about let's end the show with this.
I'm going to go vomit in a bag.
Let's end the show with this. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. Larry, I know you and I are in the same boat. We don't have our fathers anymore. Chase, I don't know if your father's still with you or if you are a father, but it's a very, very special weekend. An awful lot of us have a connection with the teams that we root for or care about, thanks to our dads passing that along to us. I'm going to miss not being able to call my dad on the Sunday of the U.S. Open, which he would have been watching on Father's Day. I always get that little lump in my throat somewhere where they're walking down the 18th. I think I would have been on the phone with my dad right now if this were happening and he were still here. So happy Father's Day to all the dads, all the uncles, all the grandparents, all the folks out there who are helping raise the next generation of boys and girls. Happy Father's Day to everyone. Cheers.
Yeah.
Well, to fathers, basically.
Chase, are you a father?
Despite my name being Chase Sr., I do not have a Chase Sr. Jr. running around. Hopefully that's not the case for a little while, but shout out to my dad, Jeff, love him. And my stepdad as well, who helped raise me. But my dad really helped form my love for sports. We would go to games all the time growing up. And some of my best, most foundational, fondest sports memories are with my pops.
Yeah, mine too. I would have to say the late, great George Kruger, who we lost during the pandemic, was a very special man. And he was one of those guys that helped you kind of discover that you had a dream, and then kind of nurtured that dream and then supported that dream. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do with my 3 boys and 1 daughter is, try to encourage them to just start with a dream of what you want to do and how you want to live, and then help them along the way to nurture it and bring it to, make it a reality. So George Kruger, if you're up there, thank you very much for inspiring me to live my dreams. So
now you get to celebrate Father's Day weekend with Kev graduating. That's a pretty awesome moment.
Seriously, and I've got nothing but a lot of love and respect for Kev and what he's done for this channel, what he's done for Damon, what he's done for many people is incredible stuff, and he's an inspiration. So yeah,
I know that Kev is sleeping in this morning because he said he was sending over the studio and thumbnail for today's show, and he forgot to hit send. So I was like, "Hey, Kev, can you send that again?" And he's like, "I'm at the bar. I'll get it to you later." And that email didn't come in until after midnight. So I
told him, I said, work. He followed my advice. I said, work hard, but play harder.
Good.
On that note, Chase, Damon, have a great Friday. Thanks to everybody. We will do it again next week. Until then, peace.